final topic of the day, and we're going to get on out of here. We're going to be talking about why DC actually needs to reboot. And there's a certain fan base. There's a certain fan base that just does not want to push with this new rebooted DC cinematic universe. And let's just go straight over here. There is actually, you know what? Let me just go back. There's a certain fan base that really want to restore the Snyder continuity of the DCEU. And whether you agree with that or not, perfectly fine. I disagree with that. I think that we need a reboot for the DC universe, and here's why. Okay. Number one, the box office. The box office has been lackluster, right? You have a bunch of characters like Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and a bunch of other characters that you haven't even touched yet. And these movies just are not making money. Okay, let's go over here to our chart here. Okay, so on the bottom, Man of Steel, the first Superman movie, in this new superhero cinematic universe that they were starting back in 2013. You know, The Dark Knight Rises had just come out the year before. That made over $1 billion. Man of Steel gets announced. Christopher Nolan is attached to the project, and it comes out and makes $667 million. Not terrible. Not amazing either. I feel like if, after The Dark Knight Rises and you make a Superman movie, right, with Christopher Nolan's name attached, I would assume that it would make over $1 billion. But hey, $667 million, not too bad at all. On a $225 million budget. Next up, 3 years later, instead of a Man of Steel 2, we get Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Okay? And this is the movie that should have made $1 billion. You have a movie with Batman, with Superman in the title, and it failed to gross $1 billion. It failed to gross $900 million. It made $872 million. Again, it's not terrible. Like, you look at that and be like, oh, I wish I had $872 million. Yes, of course. But it should have made a lot more. It should have made $1 billion. Okay. A little bit later, Suicide Squad, the original. I'm not going to lie. The first Suicide Squad, not great. Not a great movie. None of these movies are, like, amazing. But I did have fun with this one, admittedly. And it made $745 million. This one was a success by far at the box office. Critically, though, not so much. Okay. At a $175 million budget, this managed to make $745 million. That is pretty impressive. I will give DCEU that. Okay. Next, Wonder Woman. $817 million. Respectable. I think a lot of people will agree, too, that Wonder Woman is still probably one of the best DCEU movies that they've made. And it made $817 million. Female-led, female-directed. Very, very, very impressive. I can't give them any fault on here. Now, this is where it gets kind of disappointing. Okay? Justice League. If you ask anybody, now, the Avengers, let me go back to just me real quick. If you ask anybody, who's more popular, the Avengers or the Justice League, nowadays, people are going to say the Avengers. And people would assume, oh, it's always been like that. The Avengers were always the cooler. No, they weren't. I mean, if you ask my dad, who loves both Marvel and DC, he'll tell you too, Justice League was always the more popular, big team. And the fact that you make a Justice League movie and it makes $655 million when it should have been $1 billion movie once again, you have everybody, the big hitters. I mean, the Flash, for one, is a hugely popular comic book character. And then you have Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and then Aquaman. Yeah, sprinkle him in there. Cyborg, sure, sprinkle him in there. That movie should have made $1 billion for sure. There's no excuse on that. At least in my opinion, there should be no excuse. There was obviously a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with this movie. This was not the original vision that Zack Snyder wanted. And I agree. That's why Zack Snyder's Justice League was a lot better. I 100% agree with that. But it still should have made $1 billion. If it was a good or bad movie, it still should have made $1 billion. With just those characters on that poster and the title Justice League, should have made $1 billion. Coming out in 2017 also, when, superhero movies are at its damn near peak, yeah, I think this movie should have made $1 billion, whether it was bad or good. And that's just my opinion. Next up, okay, we got Aquaman. Now, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But the original Aquaman came out 2018. This made $1.1 billion. Nothing to say here. This one was highly successful, mainly because of its popularity in international territories. But nonetheless, this one is a huge success. I will say that. And then this is where we start falling off a bit, and there are going to be some kind of excuses to be made for these, valid or not. Still, Shazam, $85 million budget, $363 million worldwide. Not bad. Still, $363 million is pretty low for a superhero movie. Marvel at the time released something called Guardians of the Galaxy, where nobody even knew who they were, and that made 800, right? So blaming it on the popularity isn't a very valid excuse, right? So I think at this point, this is where you start seeing the reputation of DC kind of wither down. The next movie, Birds of Prey. $82 million budget, only made $200 million. Now we're getting close to pandemic times. Take a look at the date here, February 7th, 2020. Okay, Birds of Prey comes out. Let's just say it stays in theaters for about 90 days, right? The theatrical release. Sure, you can say that this movie got hit by pandemic. However, if you look at the opening weekend, it only made $33 million right here. It only made $33 million this opening weekend. Do you really think it was going to make a lot more over the next 2 months? I don't think so. So $200 million is what it made. And then we finally get into the COVID stuff. And again, yes, that it's COVID, right? Not a lot of people were going to the movies. So you got Wonder Woman 1984, came out Christmas 2020. Also came out on HBO Max at the same time. It made $166 million. Obvious flop. The Suicide Squad, that made $167 million. Obvious flop. Even though it was an amazing movie. Huge flop. Then Black Adam came out in 2022. We're still getting a little bit out of the pandemic. Came out in 2022. Black Adam, $200 million budget. And then you go over and it doesn't even make $400 million. For Black Adam, for a movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the biggest superstar in Hollywood, basically. I mean, can we agree on that at least? He's a huge actor. $391 million. Yeah, that was honestly a little bit disappointing. The next one that you get, Shazam 2, the sequel, that fails to make its budget back, and we're well out of the pandemic era also. We are well out of the pandemic era. And it makes $132 million. Okay, this is the big one. This is the one that I did not see coming. The Flash. This came out this summer. And it grossed only $267 million. Excuse me. $267 million. And I like this movie a lot, man. I really did. And the fact that it only made $267 million with the kind of movie that it is very disappointing. Insanely disappointing. There are a lot of factors to why the Flash failed, but one of the big factors is that DC was kind of just on a losing streak, right? And a lot of people were kind of going away from DC movies. After Shazam! Fury of the Gods, nobody really even wanted to watch any more DC movies. Blue Beetle. Oh, wonderful little movie. We reviewed it here on the Playback podcast. You guys can go watch back on our review of it. We actually really enjoyed it. Only made $121 million. Now, granted, this movie was supposed to just get released on HBO Max, right? It was supposed to be straight to streaming. So $121 million, to me, that's a success just because it was, originally supposed to make nothing. But $121 million on $120 million budget, that's pretty much a failure, right? Could have made a lot more. And then we have, obviously, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom coming next. So there we go. There's the box office. Doesn't look too good, right? So that's one reason why the DC universe needs to reboot. Here's the second reason. Critical reception. Now, Rotten Tomatoes, it's not the greatest website when it comes to rating movies. It actually just takes the amalgamation, the summation of if people liked it or not, and it gives you a rating. So that's what the rating is. It's not judging it based off, a grade, A through F. But let's just take a look anyway. Peacemaker Season 1, which I'll argue, even though it has some connections to the DCEU, it does seem a little bit far removed from the DCEU. 94% positive. Okay? I agree with that. All right? That's amazing. Okay? But, hey, not a lot of people watched Peacemaker. Wonder Woman still stands. Like I said, it's probably looked at as the best DCEU movie still, and it's holding a 93%. Shazam, a 90%. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, all these kind of look good. Why would they need a reboot? That's true, guys, but you also have to take in consideration the fact that the box office wasn't there also. So it's both of these things combined, right? So Shazam, yes, it had a 90%. Yes, I did enjoy it also. Didn't make a lot of money. Number 4, The Suicide Squad. 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Again, amazing movie. However, it didn't make any money. So there you go. It's the box office plus the ratings. If those are both well enough, then you can keep going with your universe. But if one is lacking, I think you got to reboot. And here we are. We see that here. Harley Quinn. The Birds of Prey movie, 78%. That's not bad, but what did it make at the box office? It didn't make a lot of money. Okay, Blue Beetle, again, not bad, just didn't make a lot at the box office. Zack Snyder's Justice League, this is different. This was Zack Snyder's full vision, and it got released on HBO Max. It has a 72%. Can't even really bring it up here. It was great, right? So it was very good. I agree with everybody saying that it's very good. It is. But it didn't make any box office. And, it just came out a little too late. Let's keep going here. The Flash, a movie that I really liked, a 63%. So critically, it was kind of mid-ground, right? And on top of that, it didn't make a lot of money at the box office. If I see that, this has a 63%, if The Flash has a 63%, but it made $700 million, then I'd be thinking, okay, maybe you can keep going on with this universe. It didn't do that. It didn't even make $300 million at the box office, and it has a kind of low Rotten Tomatoes score. So it just keeps on adding to the point that it might be time to reboot. Let's take a look here. This is an interesting one. Aquaman, 66%. Not great score once again, but it made $1 billion, right? So again, not a great score, but the box office really saved that one. So if this got released, I would be totally fine. If this got released today, I'd be totally fine if they decided, hey, maybe it's time to just keep going with this universe. Let's not stop. Wonder Woman, 1984. This was one of those times. It was COVID times, so you can't really blame it on that. But also, it wasn't that great of a movie at 58% critically. Plus the fact that it didn't make a lot of money. Man of Steel, the first movie was kind of the first movie in the DCEU was kind of mid, according to Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not saying that it's mid, but it's in the middle grounds, right? Not a lot of people liked it, not a lot of people hated it. It's just kind of in the middle. And on top of that, like I said, box office wasn't super impressive. Okay, Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I actually like this movie. It was actually pretty good. Critics do not agree with me, and box office did not make a lot of money. Justice League, 39%. No way in hell that any Justice League movie should be that low. Also, didn't make a lot of money. They're just furthering my point. Black Adam, 38%. Didn't make a lot of money. $391 million at the box office. Batman vs. Superman, 29%. Didn't break $1 billion with a movie that has Batman and Superman in the title. Suicide Squad, 26%. It did, however, make $745 million, so that's one of those rare cases. But you can kind of see what I'm trying to get at here, right? All of these movies have one thing or the other, right? They either have the box office or they have the critical reception. It's usually never both, right? And because of that inconsistency, I just cannot see why some people would want to have this universe continue. I think it's time to restart with James Gunn at the helm and try something new. And hey, if it fails, if this new universe fails, then fuck it, just do something else. Wait a little bit. And then do something else. You gotta keep trying, right? Like, this is huge IP. These are huge heroes, huge potential for money to be made here. You gotta try, right? So that's another thing. Is the critical reception, the tone. It's incohesive. Cohesive? Why did I say it like that? Incohesive. So you have an example would be like Shazam. Right, it's kind of funny, it's kind of lighthearted, and then you have the Snyder films like Man of Steel, you have Batman vs. Superman, which is very dark, right? So the tone is inconsistent and incoherent, and I just think that when you also sprinkle in movies like Black Adam and The Flash and Aquaman, you start to get, there's no through line between these movies, and it gets kind of distracting at a point where it feels like, are these movies even in the same universe? Like I said before, too, Aquaman kind of seems really far removed from any of the stuff that Zack Snyder was doing with the character. So I don't know, man. The tone is just very, 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 very incoherent. And that's that. Another thing, your main player, Superman, he's barely even featured in the movies. Obviously before Black Adam came out, where he made a little cameo. Before that, where the fuck was Superman? Since 2017, and for 4 years, there was no Man of Steel 2. There was no Superman solo movie coming out. There was no little cameo appearance or anything. You had a headless Superman cameo in Shazam. But what are we doing here? He's the main course. He's the reason why people love DC, why a lot of people love DC. Batman and Superman are the main reasons why a lot of DC fans are DC fans. And even Batman, man. Even Batman wasn't really in the DCEU like that. He made a couple cameos, but that's about it. So yeah, main players not really featured in the movies. Another reason, no leadership. It's kind of been documented. You guys can look it up if you want, but A lot of the CEOs that got, replaced, and the leadership at DC within Warner Brothers got replaced, and they kept switching out and stuff like that. Nobody ever really knew what to do with the DC extended universe, because people just kept getting fired and people kept getting replaced, and new continuity. There was a bunch of stuff. There was even a setup for, I think it was Walter Hamada. And you guys can look this up if you want to do more research. I didn't have anything prepared, but I just wanted to talk about it anyway. There was a little bit of a storyline trying to be set up with Flashpoint and Crisis on Infinite Earths stuff, and they just never got to it because people kept getting fired and the regime kept changing. So again, there's no leadership. DC Studios, recently, James Gunn is now a part of DC, and he's the CEO, and he's going to be in charge of the creative stuff. And I think that he can do that. I think that he can be the leader that DC needs right now, to have that through line, right? To kind of have that through line between all movies and projects and stuff. And then my last thing, I think the fans are just sick of it. I think the fans, that they don't really like a lot of the DC stuff going on, and you can kind of feel that for sure. It's just time. If you ask anybody on the street, hey, what's going on in DC? They're not going to know. But I bet you, if you ask anybody on the street, hey, what's going on with Marvel right now? I'm sure a lot of them would be like, aren't they doing like a multiverse thing or something? At least they got that right now. I'm not a huge fan of the multiverse stuff right now at Marvel, but at the very least, they have that going on for them, right? So yeah, man, those are the reasons that that DC needs to reboot. As far as my expectations go, where do I see DC going? Well, Superman Legacy comes out in 2025. It's probably going to get pushed to around 2026 maybe, because of the strikes and stuff. Hopefully that stuff gets resolved soon. But I don't know, man. My expectations, I just need them to reboot. That is it. Just start over, start fresh. I really wish they would reboot, excuse me, hold on, I'm about to Excuse me. I really wish they would just reboot fully, but doesn't seem like they're doing that. Seems like Viola Davis is still coming back as Amanda Waller. Seems like John Cena is still going to be Peacemaker, even though they have ties to the old DCEU, and that's fine. Those are small retcons that you have to make if you are, gonna bring them back. But some people are even talking about Blue Beetle maybe coming back. Jolo Maraduena coming back as Blue Beetle in the new DCU. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm very excited, though, because DC has a lot of potential, like I said, to make a lot of money and make good movies. I remember being a DC fan as a kid, watching the DC animated stuff. I don't remember a lot of it, but I remember watching Justice League Unlimited and Justice League the series. I remember watching Batman, the animated series, playing the Batman games. So like I love this. I love this stuff. I just want to see good movies. That's all. And hopefully, in the future, we can get some really good DC stuff. But hey, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments section. What do you guys think DC should do? Should they restore the Snyderverse? Should they bring it back? Or should they just move on and do something new? Are you in with James Gunn? Or do you want them to go back to the Zack Snyder stuff?